Broadcasting live worldwide.
Hi everyone, welcome back. It looks like Ontario Premier Doug Ford is in hot water over his government's purchase of a $28.9 million 10-year-old jet aircraft that's intended to be used by the Premier as part of his official responsibilities and to satisfy his travel needs and the travel needs of government cabinet ministers as well, as they move about the province, or they travel to other provinces, or they travel south to the United States, or wherever they happen to be traveling. Being part of government also means that you have to reach out every once in a while in person to your constituents. And if that is the province, the people living in the province of Ontario, that means that you're going to have to find a mode of transportation that will get you to wherever you need to be going. And since Ontario is a fairly large place, it is the second largest geographic jurisdiction in the entirety of North America. The distances can be fairly vast and the travel can be onerous. And the government is looking at this new aircraft as being part of the solution for that. Now, a lot of people are not happy with Mr. Ford here. Interestingly enough, I'm okay with this. But the main argument has to do with the fact that people are having trouble buying their groceries and all of that economic stuff where people are just finding it more difficult to make ends meet. And I don't have any issue for that, because all that's true. So with that as a backdrop, a lot of people are suggesting that this purchase of a government jet like this for the Premier's use kind of smacks as sort of an overreach, especially for a Premier that prides himself as a people's Premier. It's no great mystery that Doug Ford is I guess a lot of people would view him as a populist. And so there are some political pundits and other so-called self-styled experts out there that are saying that this might represent the beginning of the end, or the diminishment or degradation of Doug Ford's brand, of Ford Nation. I don't know. I can't tell you that, but I haven't agreed with everything that Premier Ford has done in the province. But I don't have a problem with this particular purchase. And most of what I have to say, and most of my reasoning, it comes down to dollars and cents, because this actually saves us money in the long term. So, the aircraft itself is a 2016 Challenger 650, which is made by Bombardier in Quebec. As I mentioned before, the plane is 10 years old already, but that's not a problem. These planes last for 40 or 50 years, as long as they maintain a basic yet, rigorous maintenance schedule. These things have a pretty long shelf life. And so, $28.9 million for a 10-year-old aircraft of this stature, that's about the going rate. And there is a fairly robust market, a fairly robust resale market for exactly this kind of thing. And so, I'm not an expert in the purchase of secondhand aircraft, but from what I can understand through my research and looking around, it doesn't look like anything untoward happened here that anyone could, in my mind, raise the hue and cry over. But nevertheless, the man has been pretty much excoriated over the last week. Although I did see an article in yesterday's Toronto Star that sort of took the same position that I'm taking right now. So there's two of us out there, Doug, in Ontario, that are supporting you on this. But our support doesn't really matter, because you sort of backed out of it because you caved under the pressure. Just like you caved under the pressure when you wanted to outfit that van. Remember the van? I guess it was in your first term. And because there's so much travel, there was an idea that you were going to get a van, an extended van, and you were going to kit that out with a large screen television, a reclining chair or two, a bar fridge, that sort of thing. And again, it smacked of largesse. Everybody raised a great big stink over that. Like, again, it's an example of extravagant luxury for a Premier who styles himself as a man of the people. And so I guess a lot of people saw an inconsistency there. Well, I don't. Most of our population here in Ontario is in southern Ontario or southwestern Ontario and southeastern Ontario. So a lot of those places can be reached through the road and highway network of Ontario. And so a specialized van of that nature doesn't strike me as an extravagance of any sort. I mean, okay, so it's got a reclining chair in it, like big deal. It's got a bar fridge in it. Well, folks, I don't know. The Premier of Ontario doesn't drink alcohol, so I would imagine that bar fridge is probably going to contain non-alcoholic beverages. And as far as the big screen television, well, okay, so there's lots of things that can happen there. The guy could be checking out the news. I'm sure he's not watching television for pleasure, okay? Not only that, but that screen can be used to teleconference, Zoom call, all that kind of stuff. So it's all, again, very consistent with the elements of government and all the things that go into that. I mean, the man has to travel, but he has to work while he travels. And so that van, very similar to this aircraft, in my mind was a really good idea, but that got shot down as well. So again, with respect to this Challenger 650 aircraft, it's a 12-seat executive jet. It has a flight range of 7,400 kilometers, and it has a flight hour cost of $6,500. Basically, it costs $6,500 an hour to operate this aircraft. That is compared to the Premier having to charter aircraft, where he's been doing a lot of traveling recently. So, from province to province, within the province, from the province to various states in the United States. He just recently came back from a trip to Texas to visit Governor Greg Abbott down there. I know he's going to a conference in one of the Carolinas to visit with a group of Eastern Seaboard governors in a week or two. And then there's another conference out west, out in Utah, I think, or Idaho, which is very similar. And, why is he jetting around all over the place? Well, he's the premier of the most populous province of Ontario, 16.5 million. We're the second largest geographic jurisdiction in Canada. And as I said, the second largest geographic jurisdiction in North America. In fact, when I said Ontario has the most people of any province in Canada, Ontario has the 5th largest population of any jurisdiction in North America, and that includes any of the American states. There are only 4 states that have, maybe 5, that have a greater population than Ontario. Ontario adds about 38% to the country's, Canada's gross domestic product. We are an economic driver within Confederation, and given our size and scope and our economy, we are a driver as well across the international border into the United States. So basically what I'm saying is we're an important place, and our premier, as the person who represents us, is an important individual. And so, I want him to get to places, and I don't want him dressed in sackcloth, and I don't want him sitting on sandpaper and tacks and that sort of thing. I know he's a man of the people, but the people have cars. And cars have basic amenities in them that give them that feel of luxury. Luxury is a part of the automotive experience. And yet, if he was just driving around in a car, like in a Cadillac or a great big suburban SUV or something like that, like nobody would say anything about it. And yet those are big gas guzzling, luxurious vehicles. But I guess they don't have the same kind of cachet as something with a reclining seat. Well, maybe the Suburban does have reclining seats. I don't know. Frankly, I've never been in one. I'm not important enough to drive around in a Suburban. So, anyways, as I said, the Premier has been paying to go charter. Charter usually comes around at $10,000 an hour, a flight hour. Okay, so right off the bat, buying the Challenger represents a $2,500, a $3,500 difference in flight hour cost vis-a-vis the charter route. Now, the government of Ontario does own an airplane, and it is intended for this very use, the Premier and for government ministers. It is a Beechcraft turboprop. Now, I kind of made that sound like a Depression era 1930s crop duster, and it's not. It's a very capable aircraft, but it's a much smaller aircraft. I think it has a range of 2,000 kilometers. I don't think it can take as many passengers, so it's just not as large and it's just not as functional as the 650. So it just, and interestingly enough, the Premier actually doesn't like to fly. I don't think he really gets too excited about getting on a plane, but when you're the chief executive officer, so to speak, of a place that has an area of this size, like a trip to Kenora, that's like 1,900 kilometers by road, right? So if you were to drive there and go nonstop, like that's almost like a full day, 24 hours on the road to get to Kenora. Whereas if you fly there, it's like 1,200, 1,300 kilometers. Of course, it's a straight shot, right, as the crow flies. And also, I think it's about a 1 hour, 1.5 hour flight versus the 24-hour car ride. So, it's not many ways that we can get the Premier to Kenora, which is basically alongside the Manitoba border, without flying them. I mean, what are we going to do? Mail them? We're going to send him FedEx Premium. What are we going to do with this guy? If the people in Kenora pay taxes too, provincial taxes, so they have every bit as much right as the rest of us to see their Premier or to see their government ministers and that sort of thing. So, to me, this just makes absolute good business sense.